The call came in the middle of a quiet evening. Gavin Mercer was rinsing mud from his boots in the garage when his phone vibrated across the workbench. The house behind him sat still, lights warm in the windows, neighborhood calm in the way suburbs often pretend to be. The name on the screen made him answer before the second ring. "Dad?" Her voice wasn't steady. It wasn't crying. It was tight. "Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are watching from. It helps more than you know." "Talk to me," Gavin said, already moving. "I'm in Uncle Derek's truck," she whispered. "He said we're going to look at something. I don't want to go." Gavin stepped out into the driveway without remembering how his feet got there. "Where are you?" "I don't know. We passed the old grain silos." "He won't let me out." Gavin's world narrowed. "How long ago?" 5 minutes maybe. He keeps looking at me weird. 17 years old. Smart. Careful. Not dramatic." If she was whispering, something was wrong. "Put me on speaker and set the phone down," Gavin said calmly. She hesitated. "I can't." A door slammed somewhere in the background. The line crackled. "Dad, he's turning off the highway. Stay with me," Gavin said. The call cut. No goodbye. No scream. Just silence. Gavin stood perfectly still for 1 second. Then he moved. Former Delta Force. Retired 8 years earlier, he had built a construction business outside Des Moines, Iowa. Concrete, steel contracts. A normal life layered carefully over a past that had never fully disappeared. But training doesn't vanish. It waits. He opened his truck, started the engine, and pulled up the location share app his daughter used when walking home from school. The dot blinked, then froze. County Road 17, near the Cedar Creek wetlands. Gavin didn't speed. He drove with precision. Every turn calculated. Every mile counted. His wife had warned him about Derek months ago. Subtle comments. Uncomfortable glances. Financial trouble. A business that never quite made sense. Derek Shaw had always carried resentment like a badge. Gavin's discipline irritated him. His quiet confidence. His military background. Men like Derek mistook control for arrogance. The wetlands appeared ahead, dark, flat, open land with water channels weaving through tall grass. Few houses. No witnesses. Gavin killed his headlights 200 yards from the access road. The phone dot remained frozen near the boat launch. He stepped out into cool air. Listened. Wind across reeds. Distant engine idling. He moved along the ditch line, low and silent. Boots barely disturbing gravel. The truck came into view first. Derek's pickup. Driver's door open. Interior light glowing. No sign of his daughter. Gavin's pulse stayed steady. He circled wide, scanning tire marks and footprints in mud softened by recent rain. 2 sets. One heavier, one lighter. Leading toward the tree line. He followed. Halfway into the brush, he heard voices. Derek's. Low. Urgent. "You shouldn't have looked in my office," he was saying. A second voice answered, shaking. "Let me go." Gavin stepped forward. Derek stood near the edge of the water, one hand gripping his niece's arm, the other holding her phone. She saw her father first. Her shoulders dropped. Relief flashed across her face before fear returned. Derek turned. For a second, surprise. Then, anger. "You shouldn't be here," Derek said. "I'm exactly where I should be," Gavin replied. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He stepped closer. Derek pushed her behind him. "Family matter," he snapped. Gavin's eyes moved once, assessing stance, distance, weight distribution. Derek reached into his jacket. Gavin closed the gap in 2 strides. One hand trapped the wrist. The other drove into the elbow joint with controlled force. A sharp crack split the air. Derek screamed. Gavin pivoted, swept the legs, and dropped him face first into wet earth. Not rage. Technique. He pinned Derek with a knee to the spine. "You're done," Gavin said quietly. His daughter stood frozen near the water line. "You okay?" he asked without looking away. She nodded, breath shaking. Derek tried to twist free. Gavin adjusted pressure slightly. "Talk," he said. Derek spat mud. She saw something she shouldn't have. "What?" "Nothing that concerns you." Gavin pressed harder. Pain loosened arrogance quickly. "Money," Derek gasped. "Just money." But Gavin had already noticed something else. Fresh tire tracks. More than one vehicle. And the faint outline of a boat launch recently used. This wasn't impulsive. It was planned, and Derek hadn't been alone. Gavin looked toward the dark water. Whatever his daughter had interrupted went deeper than resentment. He lifted Derek to his feet, ignoring the broken arm hanging useless at his side. "You're going to explain everything," Gavin said, because tonight had started as a family problem, but it was about to become something much larger. Derek's arm hung at an unnatural angle. Gavin didn't loosen his grip. He walked him back toward the truck while his daughter followed close behind, still shaking but steady on her feet. The wetlands were quiet again, as if nothing had happened, but Gavin knew better. Nothing about this felt random. "Keys," Gavin said. Derek hesitated. Gavin tightened pressure on the fractured joint just enough to remind him of the situation. The keys dropped into the mud. Gavin picked them up and opened the back door of the truck. "Get in." Derek climbed in without argument. Gavin turned to his daughter. "Go sit in my truck. Lock the doors. Do not open them unless I say so." She nodded and moved quickly. When Gavin returned to Derek's vehicle, he searched it with clinical efficiency. Glove box, center console. Under the seats, he found a second phone. Burner model. Cheap casing. Recently used. He powered it on. Multiple outgoing calls within the last hour. One number repeated. He memorized it. Then he opened the bed of the truck. A tarp. A rope. Duct tape. Not just money. Gavin closed the tailgate slowly. When he opened the rear door, Derek looked smaller. "What did she see?" Gavin asked. Derek swallowed. "She wasn't supposed to go into my office." "That's not what I asked." Silence. Gavin leaned closer. "I have no problem finishing what I started," he said calmly, "but I'd rather understand it first." Derek's composure cracked. "She saw transfers, accounts, storage invoices. She thought it was fraud. Is it?" Derek looked away. "It's temporary holding." "For what?" Derek didn't answer. Gavin grabbed the broken arm again. "Say it." "Shipments." Derek gasped. "Boat shipments. The wetlands. The launch. The second set of tire tracks. Smuggling." "What kind of shipments?" Gavin asked. Derek hesitated again. Gavin increased pressure. "Say it." "Pharmaceuticals," Derek said quickly. "Stuff not cleared yet." Gavin studied his face. "Lies have patterns. This one had layers." "Who else?" Gavin asked. Derek stared at the floorboard. "It's not just me. I know. There's a distribution line out of Omaha. They move inventory through the creek before it hits the interstate." Human trafficking crossed Gavin's mind. He didn't show it. "If my daughter hadn't called me," he said quietly, "where would she be right now?" Derek didn't answer. The silence was louder than any confession. Gavin stepped back and shut the door. He walked to his own truck and opened the passenger door. His daughter looked at him with wide, searching eyes. "Are we safe?" she asked. "For now," he replied. He didn't sugarcoat. He handed her the burner phone. "Do you recognize this?" She shook her head. "He made a call after he grabbed me," she said softly. "He thought I didn't see." "Did he say anything?" She nodded. "He said, 'Change the pickup.'" Gavin absorbed that. Change the pickup. So there had been a pickup planned, and his daughter had interrupted something already in motion. He closed the truck door gently and stepped aside to think. Former Delta Force. Recon first. Reaction second. He dialed an old number he hadn't used in years. It rang twice. "You're retired," the voice on the other end said. "I am. So, this isn't social." "No." A pause. "What do you need?" "Vehicle plate trace," Gavin said. "Possible interstate trafficking corridor near Cedar Creek." Silence shifted to focus. "Send it." Gavin read off the number from the second set of tracks. Mud prints had preserved a partial imprint near the launch. He had memorized it in seconds. "Give me 15 minutes, the voice said. Gavin hung up and walked back to Derek's truck. He opened the door. "You're going to sit very still," he said, "because if anyone else shows up, I will assume they're not here to talk." Derek's bravado had evaporated completely. 10 minutes later, Gavin's phone vibrated. "White cargo van registered to a shell company," the voice said. "Linked to an ongoing federal narcotics investigation. They've been watching it." "Watching?" Gavin asked evenly. "Building a case." Gavin looked toward the dark water. "How long?" "Months." His daughter had almost become collateral in someone else's timeline. "Do they know about tonight?" Gavin asked. "No." Gavin ended the call. He understood the calculus immediately. The government would move slowly, carefully. They would let shipments continue long enough to map the network. His daughter had been leverage, or insurance. Either way, she had been expendable. Gavin opened Derek's door one more time. "Who runs it?" he asked. Derek's eyes flicked upward. "A man named Cole Hatcher," he said. "He doesn't forgive mistakes." Gavin nodded slowly. Then he stepped back and looked toward the road. Headlights were approaching in the distance. Not law enforcement. Too steady, too quiet. This wasn't over. Not even close. And whoever was driving toward them had just entered a situation they did not understand. The headlights cut across the reeds and died before the engine did. White cargo van. Same model his contact had described. Gavin didn't look at Derek. He didn't need to. 2 doors opened. 2 figures stepped out. No hurry in their movements. That was the first mistake. Men who feel untouchable don't rush. Gavin walked back to his truck and leaned in through the open window. "Stay inside," he told his daughter. "Lock it again." She nodded and did exactly that. When he turned back, the men were halfway down the slope toward the launch. "You Derek?" one of them called out. The voice was flat, professional. Gavin stepped forward before Derek could answer. "You're early," Gavin said calmly. Both men paused. They hadn't expected someone else. "Who are you?" the taller one asked. "Family," Gavin replied. They exchanged a glance. The shorter one stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "We're here for inventory," he said. "Move." Gavin didn't move. "I think tonight's canceled." Silence stretched thin. The taller man shifted his weight, scanning the area. He was armed, concealed under the jacket, but the outline was there. Gavin took 1 step forward, keeping his voice even. "You have 2 choices," he said. "Get back in your van and drive away, or stay and learn something." The shorter man smirked. "I don't think you understand how this works." Gavin did. Better than they knew. When the taller man's hand dipped toward his waistband, Gavin closed distance in a blur of controlled motion. Wrist trap, shoulder rotation. The weapon never cleared leather. A sharp elbow drove into the rib cage with measured force. Air left the man in a violent gasp. The shorter one lunged. Gavin pivoted, redirecting momentum, using the slope to his advantage. A sweep took the man off his feet. He hit mud hard enough to stun. The taller man recovered enough to swing. Gavin slipped inside the arc and struck once at the side of the neck. Precision, not rage. The man dropped to 1 knee, disoriented. Within seconds, both were on the ground. Breathing, but done. Gavin stepped back, scanning for additional threats. None. Derek watched from the truck, pale and shaking. "You shouldn't have come," Derek muttered weakly. Gavin ignored him. He pulled the weapon from the taller man's waistband and cleared it efficiently. Then he removed both phones from their pockets. One was already open to a messaging thread. "Pickup delayed," it read. Another message blinked moments later. "Status?" Gavin powered the device down. He walked back toward Derek's truck and opened the door. "You said Cole Hatcher runs this," he said. Derek nodded quickly. "He's not someone you can touch." Gavin held up the phone. "He just sent a message." Derek's composure cracked further. "He'll think I set him up." "You did," Gavin said. He shut the door and stepped away. His daughter cracked her window slightly. "Dad?" she called softly. "We're leaving," he said. "What about them? They'll wake up." He loaded Derek into the bed of his own truck, securing him with the same rope Derek had brought. Then he dialed emergency services anonymously from one of the burner phones. "2 men injured at Cedar Creek launch," he said calmly. "Possible narcotics involvement." He ended the call before questions came. Then he drove, not toward home, toward a quiet warehouse district outside the city limits. Former Delta Force didn't mean reckless. It meant layered strategy. He parked under dim streetlights and made one more call, this time to a federal contact who owed him more than one favor. "You told me they were building a case," Gavin said. "I just accelerated it." Silence on the other end. "What did you do?" "I found your distribution node." A long pause. "Where?" Gavin gave coordinates. "And the names?" the voice asked. "Derek Shaw, Cole Hatcher." The contact exhaled slowly. "You understand this complicates things." "No," Gavin said. "It clarifies them." He ended the call and turned in his seat to look at his daughter. "You okay?" She nodded. eyes still wide but steadier now. I knew something was wrong, she said. I just didn't know how big. It's over for you, he replied. It's just starting for them. Behind them, sirens began to echo faintly in the distance, moving toward the wetlands. Derek shifted in the truck bed. You don't know what he'll do, he said desperately. Gavin looked up at the night sky. He already did it, he said. Because this wasn't just about a reckless uncle anymore. It was about a network that thought leverage came in the form of someone else's child. And that was a miscalculation no one walked away from clean. The federal case would move now. But Gavin wasn't finished. He had met 2-foot soldiers tonight. The man at the top still believed he was insulated. That belief was about to expire. By sunrise, the wetlands were sealed off. Federal vehicles lined the access road. Local deputies stood back, confused but cooperative. The 2 men Gavin had left breathing were in custody, disoriented and furious, giving statements that contradicted each other before the ambulance doors even closed. Derek Shaw sat in a holding cell with his arms splinted and his arrogance fully dissolved. Gavin stood outside the federal field office in downtown Des Moines, hands in his jacket pockets, watching the building reflect early morning light. He didn't feel triumph. He felt alignment. His daughter sat in the passenger seat of his truck, safe. That was the only metric that mattered. Inside the building, a man in a Navy suit waited. Thought you were done with this life, the man said when Gavin stepped into his office. I am, Gavin replied, but it came looking. The man closed the door. You understand how close this was to collapsing months of work? You understand how close it was to my daughter disappearing? Gavin asked evenly. Silence. The suited man leaned back in his chair. We've been building a trafficking and narcotics case against Cole Hatcher for almost a year. Money moving through agricultural supply fronts, boat transfers through Cedar Creek, interstate redistribution, using family members as cover, Gavin said. Among other methods, Gavin slid the burner phone across the desk. He was expecting a pickup last night. The man looked at the device. You forced his hand. I exposed it. The suited man studied him. You want revenge. Gavin didn't hesitate. I want certainty. The difference mattered. 2 days later, warrants were executed across 3 counties. Warehouses raided. Financial accounts frozen. Multiple arrests made before the news cycle caught up. Cole Hatcher didn't run. Men like him never believed they had to. He was taken from a gated property outside Omaha just after midnight. No spectacle. No warning. Gavin didn't attend the arrest. He was home, sitting at the kitchen table while his daughter did homework. Is it done? She asked quietly. For you, he said. But part of him wasn't satisfied. Because while the federal system dismantled networks, it didn't account for personal debt. 3 weeks later, Hatcher was granted limited supervised release pending further proceedings. High-priced attorneys, technicalities, delays. Gavin watched the press conference where Hatcher spoke. I am confident the truth will prevail, Hatcher said smoothly. Confidence built on money and expectation. Gavin turned off the television. He drove to Omaha that night, not impulsively, prepared. Hatcher's property sat behind gates and cameras. Security contracted from a private firm. Gavin parked half a mile away and approached on foot. Wind direction favorable. Blind spots memorized from satellite images. He moved without triggering alarms. Former Delta Force training did not fade. It refined. He reached the perimeter fence and waited. Hatcher stepped onto his back patio alone just after 11, a cigar between his fingers. Relaxed. Certain. Gavin stepped into the edge of the patio light. Hatcher froze. Recognition flickered across his face. You, Hatcher said quietly. Yes, Gavin replied. You've made things complicated. No, Gavin said. You did. Hatcher's security was inside, unaware. Gavin closed the distance in 3 steps. The first strike drove air from Hatcher's lungs. The second dropped him to one knee. The third pinned him against the stone column. Not lethal, not reckless, precise. You used my daughter as leverage, Gavin said calmly. I don't even know your daughter, Hatcher gasped. You knew enough. Hatcher tried to swing. Gavin intercepted, twisted, and forced him face first against the patio surface. A crack echoed. Broken nose. Blood spread across stone. You built a network, Gavin said. You thought distance protected you. Hatcher wheezed. You can't touch me. Gavin leaned closer. I already have. He stepped back. Left Hatcher conscious, alive, humiliated, and aware. Security found their employer minutes later. Gavin was already gone. By the time federal agents finalized the broader indictment weeks later, Hatcher's public image had shifted from insulated businessman to exposed criminal architect. And every time he touched the bridge of his nose, he would remember the night certainty left him. Back in Iowa, Gavin stood in the driveway watching his daughter leave for school. Normal, ordinary, unburdened. The network was dismantled. The uncle faced charges. The man at the top faced prosecution. But more importantly, no one would ever see her as leverage again, because the cost of that mistake had been made clear, and men like Cole Hatcher learned best when the lesson arrived in person. The indictment dropped on a Thursday morning. 37 counts. Interstate trafficking, narcotics distribution, financial laundering, conspiracy. The press conference was broadcast across every major network in the Midwest. Charts displayed money trails. Photographs showed seized shipments. A timeline revealed how long the operation had moved quietly beneath ordinary headlines. Derek Shaw appeared in court wearing a brace on his arm and a look that no longer resembled defiance. He accepted a plea agreement that included prison time in exchange for testimony. Cole Hatcher did not smile during his arraignment. The broken nose had healed poorly. A faint bend remained where bone had reset under pressure. Gavin watched none of it live. He was in his driveway replacing a fence post his daughter had accidentally backed into months earlier. Ordinary work, measured, predictable. His phone buzzed. A message from his federal contact. "It's done." Gavin typed back one word, "Good." Inside the house, his daughter was packing for a college visit. Acceptance letters had arrived early. She moved through rooms without hesitation now, music playing softly from her phone. The tremor in her voice from that night by the wetlands had vanished. Over dinner, she looked at him carefully. "You went after him, didn't you?" Gavin set down his fork. "I handled what needed handling." She studied him for a long moment. "You didn't lose yourself. It wasn't a question." "No," he said. "Because this wasn't about anger." "It wasn't?" He shook his head. "It was about drawing a line." She nodded slowly. The following week, a local reporter approached Gavin after a community safety seminar he volunteered to teach. "You were Delta Force," she said. "Do you think your background influenced how this unfolded?" Gavin didn't hesitate. "My background influenced how I stayed calm," he replied. "That's all." She pressed further. "Do you regret anything?" He considered the question. No, because regret suggested excess. There had been none. The system had moved. He had moved. Both had played their part. Later that evening, father and daughter sat on the back steps watching the sky fade into deep blue. "You were scared," he said quietly. She didn't deny it. "I thought I was going to disappear," she admitted. "You didn't," he said. She glanced at him. "You came." "Yes." Simple, uncomplicated, final. In the months that followed, court proceedings concluded. Sentences were handed down. Assets were seized. The distribution network that had used rural roads and family trust as camouflage collapsed under its own exposure. The wetlands returned to stillness. The boat launch reopened. Life resumed the illusion of quiet, but something fundamental had shifted. For Gavin, it wasn't about victory. It was about certainty. Men who believed distance insulated them learned that night it did not. Family was not leverage. It was perimeter. And he guarded his perimeter with precision. On the day his daughter left for college, he stood in the driveway again, watching her car pull away with boxes stacked high in the back seat. She rolled down the window. "Love you," she called. "Always," he replied. The road curved. She disappeared from view. Gavin stood there a moment longer, then turned back toward the house. The old life remained where it belonged, buried but ready. He hoped it would never surface again, but if it did, he knew exactly who he was. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.